Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Ann Dillard, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am so delighted to bring this episode to you tonight. Teen Talk Live, we come on every Monday night at 8 p.m. So set your clocks to join us at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday night, because what we pride ourselves on doing is sharing information and strategies to transform minds and lives of teens and those who love them. So tonight, I am just really excited, and I'm just bubbling to bring to start. Eastern Standard Time. Mute this so that I don't get feedback. So I am just excited and bubbling to kick off our February agenda. We've got lots of good stuff in store for you in February. Hey, Cassandra, thank you for joining us, Queen. And tonight we are starting off with the dynamic, I'm saying dynamic, Maria Davis-Pierre. And she is an autism expert. She is a mom, and she is a professional who is dealing with autism in the Black community. And I think this is a conversation that we need to have about autism. And so I want you to help me welcome my guest tonight, Maria. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. So anytime I get to talk about autism, I'm on it.
Yes. And I'm just so impressed with the work that you're doing, because when we talk about autism, a lot of us, let's jump off and say, a lot of us feel shame, or we don't have enough information about autism. So first of all, give us a little bit about yourself and how did you come to this work with autism in Black?
Okay, so I am a licensed mental health counselor in Florida. So I'm a therapist. My initial niche was postpartum mental health with Black women. But then we had our first child, Malia, who's now 6 years old. And at about 6 months, I started to notice some things with Malia, some signs. She had some sensory issues. She didn't answer to her name. I thought she was deaf for a long time. I would be like, clapping or making loud noises, and she would have a long reaction time. So I went to my husband, who is a physician, and I said, I think Malia is autistic. And he was like, no, you diagnose your patients. You don't diagnose my kid. Keep it over there. Type of deal.
Okay.
Yeah, he was very serious about that. And then fast forward 11 months, she actually started to regress in her speech. So she actually forgot all the words that she had previously was taught. So she forgot mom, mama, dad, ball, things like that. And when I would try to get her to repeat it, it was like she just couldn't. So at that point, I just knew what it was. So we went to her pediatrician. Her pediatrician was like, she was premature, let's give her a chance to catch up. And I was like, no, I need a referral to whoever can diagnose this. And I know that's not you. And had I already known who it was, I wouldn't have even had this conversation with you anyway, type of deal. So she gave me the referral to Early Steps, which I know a lot of you may be familiar with, because it's a program in every state. It may be called something different, but Early Steps. And we went and met with a team of professionals, and like an OT, physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, a developmental pediatrician, and a child psychologist. And they are doing all of the tests and seeing where your child is developmentally. So they do the test, they talk to me, and they say, you know what, Mrs. Davis-Pierre, we think that you're right. We do think she's autistic. However, because she's not 3, we can't give her the diagnosis. You need to go and see a child neurologist. So we have to go find one of those, which is very rare. So we find one, we go to him. He does expensive and extensive testing of things that you would have probably already known by that time, but he's doing his rollouts. He also says once he gets the testing back, yes, I do think she's autistic. However, because she's not 3, I don't want to give the diagnosis. At this point, she's 18 months and I'm frustrated. I'm saying, you want me to wait 1.5 years to see you for you guys to confirm this diagnosis. I can't accept that answer. So I said to him, I'm going to sit in your office every day. I'm going to bring you lunch, breakfast, whatever. Me and your front desk are going to have a good time. And we'll see each other every day until you give me this diagnosis. Wow. So I sat in that office for a week and he gave me the diagnosis.
My goodness. So you were out the gates and an advocate for your baby girl.
Yes.
Now, see, and to me, that's so different than the, let's say, typical parent who don't want to face it, don't want to hear about it, don't talk to me about that. What drove you to say, no, there's something else going on and I need to find that out?
I would like to say it was my instinct as a therapist, and I'm going to give the credit to actually knowing the red flags of that to being a therapist and studying it. But truthfully, it was my mother's gut. Like, girl, you don't take no for an answer. Do what you need to do, because we all know early intervention matters. So waiting 1.5 years, could be detrimental in a sense, because we're waiting so long to get services in place. So it was my mother's gut really that was pushing me, because I was not in any kind of professional mindset when I was dealing with the professionals. I'll tell you that. It was all mother's instinct of, no, we're not going to accept that. We're not going to accept that.
And that's something we have to pay attention to, and don't continue to let the professionals tell us that, no, this is this. We know our bodies. We know our children. We're experts of our own children.
Exactly. I tell my clients that all the time. You are the expert in your child's life. You're with them, all the time. When something is not going how it should be going. So that is really what I was trusting, my mother's gut. And my husband was, at that time, he had got on board and he was backing me 110%, because, oftentimes with him being a physician and him being male, they would look to him and be like, well, what do you think, Dr. Pierre? And he would be like, she's the expert in this. I know nothing. I'm following her lead. So he would, just redirect the conversation back to me.
Kudos. My goodness. So let's talk about what is autism, because there is just so much misinformation, so much stigma around, just so much. What is autism?
So autism is a neurological disorder. That's what it is. It's not a mental health diagnosis. It is actually dealing with the brain and the brain's development. That's what it is. It is not an intellectual disability. A lot of other people know that as the R term. I don't use the R term, period. Yeah. But people tend to think when they hear autism, they think intellectual disability. It is not the same thing. Can someone who is autistic have an intellectual disability? Yes, they can. They can have that diagnosis as well. But a person who is autistic doesn't necessarily have to have the diagnosis of intellectual disability.
And I think that is so important that people know the difference.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about a person with autism, so let's clear up the language first. Because when I was studying and learning about how to address people with different challenges or disability, we were always taught, okay, you use person first. So it's like person with autism. Tell me about language and what do you see, or what do you say, or how do you define what's the appropriate language or terminology to use?
So for me, I talk to those who actually are autistic. Okay. So I'm not going to be the person to speak for them and tell them, tell us, this is how we should say it. It is what they want to be, you know, known as, called as. So in speaking with a lot of people who are, you know, actually autistic, they prefer to be called autistic. I think as professionals, we're taught person first language because we don't want to offend.
Right.
But in the autistic community, from what I'm told, is that autism is a part of who they are. We cannot take it away from them at all. It's ingrained in their DNA, just like their race is. So they, you know, like to be called autistic. So they even have, you can do hashtag actually autistic on Twitter. You can, you know, see how they engage and talk, and, you know, things that, you know, we're not used to seeing and doing, and, you know, with our speech, we can see how it is actually offensive to them. So, you know, when I refer to my daughter, I just say she's autistic.
Okay. All right. So, so when we're talking about this neurological disorder, or do you say disorder?
I don't. I just say that for the purposes of teaching, training, and things like that. I just say diagnosis, even that can be offensive. So it's when we're talking about it, I do say the terms, but in talking with them, they know they're autistic. So I just say autism.
Okay.
Or
right.
ASD.
ASD. Okay. So this is neurological.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's wired differently in the brain. And so when we say people are not, let's see, I'm trying to get the phrases correct, neurotypical, right? So typical brain would be like your brain developing and meeting those milestones that somebody set for you.
Exactly.
Milestones differently.
Exactly. So neurotypical would be, for instance, I have 3 children. I have Malia, who's 6, and then I have a set of twins who are 3. My twins are neurotypical. They don't have any developmental delays or diagnosis. Malia would be considered atypical because she does have the autism diagnosis, but we don't say atypical, we would just say autistic. So neurotypical would be your child who is developing at the right age, you know, right age, hitting those milestones at the right age.
Okay, excellent. So as a parent, right, as a mom, I have my baby and I bring my baby home, and, you know, I have hopes and dreams, especially if it's my first baby. Baby's gonna do everything that I never got to do, and I'm gonna live vicariously through my baby, right? So, and then, like your story, at 6 months, my baby's not making eye contact. I can't cuddle, always crying, not able to soothe my baby, not responding, not smiling, not doing all those things. What do I do?
Take them to your doctor, your pediatrician, and ask them, you know, tell them what you're seeing, because a lot of times, you know, there are other delays as well. So, you know, you want to make sure that they are developing, you know, at the speed that they need to be developing at. And if there's something that is not right, then we do need to get those services in place. So a lot of the red flags of autism could be other things, or they could actually be autism, but in the same sense, if they're not meeting those milestones, it still needs to be checked. Okay, we still have to be, you know, the advocate and go in there and say, hey, you know, my child is not walking, my child is not talking, my child is not doing these things, and they should be.
Right. Okay, so what I explained was some of the symptoms or characteristics of a child with autism. So tell us some other things. What are some signs for parents to look for?
Okay. So some of the red flags would be the eye contact, sensory things. You know, bright lights, loud noises. A lot of times people will think the child is having a tantrum when it really is sensory overload. You know, they experience things, you know, on a greater scale. So, you know, the lights might be too bright and it's bothering them and they can't, you know, communicate that with you. The noises are too loud, or, you know, something doesn't feel right with their clothing, you know, so they're feeling something that, you know, is intense for them. So those sensory things, the speech.
Smells.
Yes, smells as well. So my daughter, textures, eating stuff. She doesn't eat certain things. She doesn't eat meat, period. So you know, she's not into that. She's not into sugar stuff, you know. So there's just things that she's not gonna do. She only likes a certain type of shoe, a certain, you know, type of clothing. And, you know, we just mainstream. So she has a uniform now and we're trying to figure that out because she does not like the way it feels. And I'm like, I have to figure something out now. So, you know, those sensory things, and then, you know, the speech, the regression, thinking that they're deaf because, you know, they're not having that response that, you know, most kids, when you call their name, they're going to look. For her, it was a long pause and multiple Malia, Malia, Malia for her to be like, okay, type of deal. What else? Those are our main things that you can see.
Fixation on certain objects or
it would depend. I think, because, for instance, I know a lot of children who didn't have a fixation with a lot of objects. So that could be one. My child didn't have it. Autism can present itself in girls differently as well. For instance, my child is extremely loving. She likes to cuddle. She likes all of that physical touch. So autism can present itself differently in girls as well. So I would just watch out for those major milestones. If they're doing repetitive behaviors, my child likes to spin in a circle. It's called stimming. It's for them, helping them cope with whatever, you know, bright lights, loud noises, you know, some rock back and forth. You know, there's many other stimming things that they do. My child likes to spin in a circle. So that kind of repetitive behavior is also a red flag. So those are things you're watching out for.
Wow, that's good stuff. That's good information. And so now I talked about, you know, the hopes and dreams as a mom. You know, you have your child and you have all these hopes and dreams. Now, what do we do when we find out that our child is not atypical? How do we survive in our community, or how do we deal with the guilt and all the shame and all the blame that goes along with that? That's heavy stuff.
It is heavy. And I think especially in the Black community, there's a lot that we deal with when it comes to stigmas. And I think that's, you know, one of the main reasons why there is such a gap between our children getting diagnosed and white children getting diagnosed, is because of all of the things that we have to deal with being Black. So, you know, and then you add another label onto it and it's something else. So for me, when I found out, or it was confirmed that my child was autistic, I wasn't necessarily grieving the child or anything like that because I already knew what it was. However, I was, you know, having anxiety and sadness over the fact that she is a Black autistic girl. Wow. So what does that mean now? Because being a Black girl carries a lot. Now we've added autistic on. So how is the world going to perceive her now? So that was my thing with it, dealing with how do I try to make this world kinder for her, because it's already going to be mean because we're Black women, you know, so adding that label onto it is another layer. So some parents deal with it on that end. Some parents deal with the fact that now I've already put my child through med school in my mind, and now I don't really know where we're going with that because it's such a present day thing for us. We, you know, things change so drastically day to day. We can't really see into the future. We have our hopes and we have, you know, what we want them to do, but we don't know what is going to actually happen. So it's so presently focused, you know, for us on, you know, getting through the day sometimes. So I think people don't really understand the parents' perspective of it, and a lot of shaming and guilting and, oh, your child, especially in the Black community, oh, your child just needs a whooping and they'll be fine, when that's not how, you can't beat autism out of somebody. It's not going to happen.
That is so true. Or, your child is just picky, or you cater to them too much
Yes, yes.
and not necessarily understand, because, you might be in the grocery store and see a autistic child having a meltdown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it could be they smell something. And I don't know that people who are neurotypical really understand. Well, some people do understand the magnitude of how annoying, or just a sound, a continuous buzzing could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Somebody
Mm-hmm.
who has sensory processing struggle,
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
just walking through a department store and smelling perfume and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. How that
Mm-hmm.
could just send off all kinds of alarms in that person's
Exactly, especially if it's a new place. We took my daughter to her cousin's football game. Her cousin's a cheerleader, so we were there in town and we went to the game. And I hadn't thought it through. Usually, I'm on it like, okay, what's going to be there? What can we expect? But I didn't think it through. I forgot about the bright lights. The people on the intercom, how loud it can be. It's a new environment, and I didn't have her headphones, and it was just we had to leave because she could not, cope with what was going on. And I understood that. So I was going to take her out of the situation,
right.
so it's just things like that we don't even think of that, would bother somebody, but it does.
Right. And you can't punish or
Mm-mm.
discipline autism out of a child.
No, not at all. Because they'll still be autistic after the beating and will not know why you're beating them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's powerful. But
Mm-hmm.
that guilt and that shame is a big deal. And not just with a diagnosis of autism, but any kind of diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people in different communities, especially the Black communities,
Mm-hmm.
will say, like, what did I do wrong? Or
Mm-hmm.
somebody might actually say, well, you're not living right, or you're not
Mm-hmm.
pleasing God.
Or let's pray on it. I got that one a lot. Let's pray on it. And I was like, okay, yes, pray on it. Pray I get a good therapist for her. Pray we get some understanding in this world. But as far as praying it out of her, that's just not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, what does your daily routine look like? What don't people understand about the things that you have to do
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis?
So for Malia, she is considered high functioning.
Okay.
So for her, our routine is probably different from a lot of other parents' routine because autism is such a spectrum. So every single person is individual. Of course, they're individual, but they have their own way of being autistic, I will say. So for us, we have to keep routine. We better be on routine every day. Any small thing that can take us off of our schedule will mess her up, in a sense of she's not expecting it, and it's going to take her a little while to transition into whatever new schedule that if we're running late, that's a problem. So for us, we are very routine on how we do things. If we have to change the schedule, I have to talk to her in advance to prepare her. So we are very routine in our home. Like I said, she eats certain things. So for her, she likes carb low diet. And I know if I don't give her certain things, she's just not going to eat. So she loves cereal and she loves bread and jelly. She does not eat peanut butter. She loves any type of fruit, no vegetables. She's just getting into juice. Prior to that was just water and milk. Now we've introduced juice. So there's just certain things that I know that she likes to eat and I need to have on hand for her to eat. So, we wake up in the morning. She has the same thing for breakfast. We do the same routine. We drop her little brother and sister off first. They have to be dropped off first. And then she gets dropped off at school. Then I pick her up from school. She has a snack. And then me and her may do some educational things, or she may play on her iPad. Then we go get her siblings. Then she knows it's dinner time, bath time, bedtime. So that's how our routine goes. And if there's anything that is going to mess up the routine, then we have to tell her in advance. For instance, I had a parent teacher conference 2 weeks ago. So my husband took the twins to school and I took her to school. And she got very upset with that because she, of course, wanted to ride with daddy as well. And she was not happy. And it took her, about a good 30 minutes for her to be like, okay, this is happening.
Right.
So, even though we talked to her and prepared her for it, it was still an adjustment for her.
Right.
you know
So is it fair to say spontaneity is a luxury?
Yes, very much so. Especially unless it's a fun thing. So if we're going to Disney, she really loves Disney, but she does not like Magic Kingdom. So there's 4 parks at Disney for people who don't know. One is Magic Kingdom. That's where you see the castle, one everybody sees.
Right.
She doesn't particularly like that one because it's so crowded, because it's so noisy. So we don't go to that one. We go to the other 3. So if we're going to go somewhere like that, then she's okay with it, but anything that would mess up her daily routine, like being late or, the kids having to be dropped off in another car, then that is going to be like, what's going on here? If my husband has to pick her up and because I'm doing something, I prepare her in advance. Daddy's going to be the one to pick you up today, type of deal. So things like that. Shoes, we have to make sure that they're not bothering her in a certain way. Clothing, the tags. So, Target has a new campaign of inclusiveness. So they have, no tags in some of their stuff. So we try to get those things. So, things like that people don't think of, is something that I have to think of. Safety, they are attracted to water. I have no idea why. It's just something that happens. Safety, she has no sense of danger. Right. Now she's getting older, she's having that sense of danger, but she used to like to just run away, when we were leaving somewhere, and she got hit by a car one time. Oh, no. Because she just got away and she got hit by a car. So that's something we have to think about. We were, sitting and having dinner on a lake. She jumped in the water because it was just something, that it was attracting to her. So we had to, go and get her and make sure she was okay. So certain things we have to think about when we're going somewhere now. It's like, I have to scope it out and see what's going on, type of deal. So I don't think people understand, how much preparation goes into certain things. Traveling, prepping for that, where we're going to go, how it's going to be, making sure we have certain things that she's going to like, things like that. So it's a lot of prepping.
That is so, thank you for sharing and giving us that clear picture of, all the things, not all, I'm sure you haven't shared all, but some of the things that go into a daily routine. Now, how is it having had one child, your oldest child, who is autistic, and then having 2 children who are neurotypical? How do you make the connection?
It was an adjustment for us because we were used to being autism parents. So I think because we had her first, being an autism parent was easy for us because we didn't know how to parent any other way. So then we had the twins and it was an adjustment. We were like, oh my God, this is what it's like. Okay. I know my husband was saying that he didn't realize how much our daughter didn't talk until we had the twins, and our other daughter talks nonstop. She is going all the time. And we're like, okay, Wow. So for us, it was adjusting to being parents to neurotypical children because we knew how to be a parent to a child who was autistic, because that's all we knew. So for us, it was that transitioning into, okay, we don't, they're wanting to be more independent in doing certain things. And we can let the rein go because, we're used to being helicopter parents and being on everything. And for them, they want a little more space. So we had to adjust to them. And it's still an adjustment, I'll say.
Yeah, I can imagine. They're just 3, so I can imagine those, years are coming in. Let's not talk about teenage years.
Oh my goodness, no.
That's so amazing, and I appreciate your transparency and giving us a glimpse of what life is like. And I think it's difficult again for people to have this conversation
Mm-hmm.
because of all the shame and the guilt
Yes.
and you know the grieving that they're not able to go through. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't take it lightly that you're able to share this with us. So in your practice, how do you help how do you help parents who come to you with autistic children? How do you help them navigate or come to grips with it?
So, for me, they come in at many different phases. So for me, it's about supporting them on where they're at in their journey. Some of them are coming in specifically because my child has just been diagnosed and I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go. I mean, you type autism into Google, you get millions of hits, and that is overwhelming. You know, I think a lot of people don't realize is that when our children get the diagnosis, we're not told what's next. You're given a pamphlet, or some are given a website. I was given nothing but here's your diagnosis. So I had to navigate what to do next. What therapies does she need therapy? What is next type of deal. So for some of them, it's just what is next. For some of them, it's I know my child is autistic, but my family doesn't get it. My family doesn't get it. And for those of you who don't know, I work specifically with Black parents. Autism and Black supports Black parents on their autism journey. So it's a lot of, my family's religious. They're trying to pray it out. They don't understand, and I don't think our family members and friends understand the pressure that puts on us as a parent, to know that you're not accepting what we're going through. You're not accepting my child, and you're constantly saying, oh, they may not be autistic because they can do that, or they can do this, and they don't understand that we're already dealing with so many emotions. We don't need you to try to find the next big thing for us, or, research in Google, this diet or this and that. We just need your support. We just need you to be there. That's it, a lot of times. And I think people, they get nervous and don't know what to say, so they just start talking. You don't have to, just listen. Just listen. So that's people are at that point, and then some are, I'm having trouble with the school. The school doesn't want to give my child the services they need, and I need your help. And I accompany them to IEP meetings. For those of you who don't know, the IEP is the document that runs everything once they're in school. So from kindergarten to 12th grade, the IEP is really what runs the services your child is going to get. And
And so
schools
for
don't.
those who are listening and not really familiar what IEP stands for, it's Individualized Education Plan. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's an individualized plan that's made up for your child specifically. They don't have to have autism.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any amount of challenges or disabilities or disorders. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to have, it doesn't have to, it's not specific to autism.
No, it's
And so
13 specific diagnoses that would qualify your child for an IEP. ADHD, if your child is hearing impaired, blind, things like that. So those are some of the diagnosis that will qualify your child for an IEP. So parents are like, the IEP isn't working. And that's a lot of times because schools are doing cookie cutter goals, and they're just, everybody's IEP looks the same when it's not. It's supposed to be individualized to the child to make sure that they're having the success they need. And the IEP is supposed to prepare them for what comes next after high school, supposed to prepare them for employment if they're independent living, and employment. So a lot of times the IEPs are not customized to the child, and it's not working, and they don't know what to do. So, I advocate for them in that space. And then sometimes it's me and my partner where we've lost our our spontaneity, our relationship isn't the same because, of course, having a child with a diagnosis impacts everything in the home. It impacts the relationship with the other siblings. It impacts my relationship with my husband, because a lot of times a lot of focus goes on to our child. So a lot of times the relationships get put on the back burner. So I do couples therapy to help them, reconnect and find that love again.
And the thing about it is, and a lot of people might not know, that there is a high divorce rate amongst couples who have children with a disability.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or a diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
such as a neurological
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis such as autism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what an amazing service that you have to offer, a wraparound service for the family.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I'm so engrossed in the conversation, I didn't even take time to talk to my guests tonight. I'm sorry, you all. Thank you all for joining. Hey, Dre, I'm glad you joined us. Robin, thanks for being here. Denisha, hey, thanks for being here. And Sister Campbell, I'm so glad you are here. Deborah, thanks for joining. Past Bishop Chin, thank you for being here. If you are still on the line with us, feel free to drop your comments or your questions in, because we have an expert on autism, and not just a book expert. This is a person who's living it daily in her own life, and is freely sharing with us on this forum. So drop your questions in, like and share the video out, because I think part of what we are missing, Maria, is awareness and education.
Yes, most definitely. And for those who are autistic, their campaign is acceptance. And I'm all for that, because I want everybody to accept my child. But in our community, our Black communities, we are not even aware. So if we're not aware, we can't get to acceptance. So we have to make them aware, educate them so that they can, get to acceptance. My parents are from a little town in Alabama, and I can guarantee you a lot of people don't know what autism is. A lot of people in my family didn't know what autism was until my child was diagnosed autistic, and then educating them on that. There was a lot of educating I had to do with my own family on this is what it is. There was a lot of boundary setting I had to do with my own family to let them know this isn't going to fly. You're not going to make my child feel any type of way other than accepted. And if you can't handle that, then you can't handle us. And it sounds easy, but trust me, it's not. It's not, especially if they're, helping you out and they're one of the caregivers. Setting boundaries can be a difficult thing. So, we have to think of that it comes with awareness, education, and then we can do the acceptance. But I'm all for acceptance, but we just have to make sure people know what they're accepting, because they don't know. A lot of people don't know it exists.
And okay, so that leads me to my next question. Now, when I was growing up, we didn't hear about autism. Mm-mm. And so a lot of times people are like, is that a new diagnosis? Is that something new that's happening to our children? Is this a ploy, or is something the government is doing?
A setup for our blackmails.
Right. It's some kind of conspiracy theory. So tell us, why are we hearing so much cases of children with autism or adults being diagnosed with autism? How come it's so much more prevalent now?
I think it has to do with the education. A lot of people don't know, but your regular pediatrician is not taught how to diagnose autism. They can't even diagnose autism. It's a developmental pediatrician, a child neurologist, or a child psychologist. That's about all you're going to get in those who can diagnose autism. 3 specialties, and that's not a lot of people. Okay, so your regular pediatrician is not taught what the signs and the symptoms are. They're given a checklist that they're supposed to do at each well visit that they're seeing, but I can guarantee you most pediatricians don't have that checklist out. They're not checking off. They're doing it in their head. They're like, okay, this could be, okay, here we go, type of deal. But a lot of times they're not doing it. They're not educated on what autism is. My own pediatrician wasn't educated on what autism, my husband, who's a physician, wasn't educated on what autism is. And, I had to do the educating for them, so your regular physicians, they just don't know. And if we're being serious, I tell my husband this all the time, doctors have a God complex. They always want to be accurate. They want to be right. They are very black and white thinkers. Okay. And there is no test that's going to say your child is autistic. There's rollouts, there's signs and symptoms. And if they're not right, they don't really want to say it because they don't want to be wrong. So there's another thing that you have to deal with. And then for our Black community, studies have shown that physicians may not want to have the conversation with Black and Latino mothers because they don't feel that they're going to understand, and they don't want to have the conversation. So they just won't say that your child may be autistic,
Wow. That's incredible, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as a therapist, we have more tools to diagnose, even though we have more tools than the pediatrician.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because in our intake session, in my intake session, I want to know about your birth experience. I want to know, did you hit developmental milestones? I want to know if you were able to be comforted, if you had eye contact. I want to know all of those things.
Yes. So we get the information, and then, we send them to somebody who is going to do the diagnosis, just like ADHD. A lot of doctors miss that and that don't know, or, and you have to be tested and go through a series of evaluations to get the ADHD diagnosis. It's all about educating our healthcare professionals because they really don't know, especially when it comes to autism. They're like, okay, no. And then there has to, in the Black community, we're overall 2 years behind white children getting diagnosed. There's stigmas that go into that, access to healthcare, English not being the first language. There's so much that goes into, us being 2 years behind, so, doctors also have the thinking that Black children can't have autism. Studies show that, they're thinking more behavioral issues. They'll give ADHD and oppositional defiant before they think autism, anything behavioral. So there's so much that goes into educating our healthcare professionals for the betterment of our children and the adults. Yeah, because people forget they grow up to be adults.
Exactly. And Melanie Dubois, I think I said it right, Dubois, she says, I'm going through this right now with my son's school. So Melanie, I hope you're finding this interesting. If you have questions for Maria, make sure you drop them in the comment section, because this is really good information, and we have to be willing to have these courageous conversations in our Black communities.
Yes.
We must have these. So Maria, let me back up a little bit. You were saying all we need is support. What does support look like for a family of an autistic child? What is support?
Listening, understanding that, we can't just drop everything and go out, on that night. It's, for instance, one of my friends was like, oh, we got tickets to such and such concert tomorrow. You want to go? No, I don't. I do want to go, but I can't go because you have to understand also the amount of people we really trust to be able to keep our schedules, to be able to know what our children need is really small. Okay. So you have to deal with that. So just listening, knowing we need the support, coming over and be willing to learn, how to deal and do the routines and things that we go through so that you can give us a break and things like that. So just providing that understanding, not, trying to give us 50 opinions on the next new research or the next big thing and things like that, coming in and, oh, well, I read this article and, I saw this on TV, and no, because that just adds more pressure to us. We're already trying to figure this thing out because we have no idea a lot of times. So we're already trying to figure this thing out. And here you come with 50 more things that we need to look at, and a lot of second guessing, because let's face it, some parents are struggling with this diagnosis that their child has gotten, and when they're already struggling, if you continue to, have these research or these opinions and things, you're making them second guess something that is already a struggle for them to accept. So, things like that to be aware of. We just want support. We just want, you to listen. And a lot of times for my parents who have an autistic child, find parents who have autistic children, because that's your community as well. A lot of times I rely heavily on my parents in my circle who have an autistic child, because they know what I'm going through. I don't have to explain certain things. I can say, Leah had her IEP meeting today, and they already know what that means. They already know my mood for that day, type of thing. So, find your community of fellow parents who have an autistic child, because that gives you a different experience. I get a different experience when I talk to my fellow moms who have autistic children than when I talk to my family who doesn't really understand, and I have to do a lot of explaining as well.
Music can be lonely.
It really can. It really can.
It can be a lonely journey. And so having that community is so important. So important. And then as we wrap up, what would you say to parents as they navigate the school system? What's one piece of advice you would like to give the parents?
Know the law. There's a specific law that protects your children's rights and your rights, and it's the IDEA law. That is the special education law. A lot of schools will tell you something, and it is not the law. If you know the law, then you can get the services your child needs. You can get the modifications, accommodations your child needs, because a lot of times the school is telling you something and it's not accurate. They're just telling you that because of funding issues or not having the staff. But your child is supposed to have certain things because of their disability and because of this law. This law ensures that your child is going to get certain things. So if you know the law, then you're going to be able to navigate the school system.
Right. And one of the things that you brought up at the beginning of the conversation is you can actually get the appropriate diagnosis before age 3. In a lot of places, it's age 3. And when I was in Minnesota, I also learned that you can get services from your homeschool district.
So in Florida, the program from 6 months to 3 is called Early Steps, and they will provide services for you. It's government run, so you get the services for free. They do the testing for free. Once they turn 3, it's then called Child Find. And then at age 3, they can actually start school early. So they can actually go through 2 years of pre-K instead of 1 year. And it prepares them, for the structure and the things that go along with school. And while they're in school, they get services that they need because they have the diagnosis and they have the IEP that ensures that they're going to get these services. So make sure you know the law, make sure you read your child's IEP, and make sure that you're looking at stuff and saying, okay, this fits for my child. Because a lot of times parents don't read the IEP and they sign it and then they don't know what to do. It's like, okay, I signed this thing.
And look, and don't miss the IEP meeting.
Do not miss. Please, and know that if they send home the letter stating that the IEP meeting on this day and you can't make it, they have to reschedule it to fit your schedule, okay? Because you are the captain of the ship as the parent and the guardian. They have to reschedule it for you. So if you give them notice and say, hey, this day doesn't work for me, they have to reschedule it. They have to fit your schedule so you can be there, because you are a part of the IEP team by the IDEA law.
Yes. And if you don't make it, you are giving other people the power to make decisions. For your child, which is not right. And, you know, you look up and they have all these things that don't really represent the services that your child needs specifically.
Exactly. And you don't have to sign the IEP in the meeting. You can take time and think about it and look it over, or you can sign it and say, I've agreed to these things, but these things I do not agree to, and we are going to work on coming to a compromise. So there's many things that you can do to make sure that your child is getting an individualized education plan that is customized and unique to their needs. So please make sure that's the most important. I do IEP reviews. I have a program for parents, a program for professionals. So please, let's make sure that we know, because that is such an important document from them from K through 12.
It really is. And the other piece of it is that the IEP meeting itself can be quite intimidating.
It can.
Get an advocate go in there with you, because you're sitting at the table. And you know, I used to go with my clients to IEP meetings, and they're sitting at the table, and I have to say, stop. You know, we don't understand that acronym. We need that plain for my child, so we can understand. Because people will talk over your head, and you feel like you leave out of there feeling so frustrated,
confused, don't know what happens, because they're also in the same time kind of rushing it, kind of, oh, we got to. They're supposed to have a set time for it. They're supposed to make sure that you're getting a certain amount of time for it, and you can ask them ahead of time how much time they've set aside. So they will do things like this, and you know, you go in there and then there's 5 to 6 people sitting over here, and then you. And that can be intimidating, and you're like, okay, you know. So your child, if your child has a private therapist outside of the school system, they can accompany you. They can write support letters for you. They can be there's special education advocates that can go to meetings with you. I attend meetings with all of my clients if they want me there, because you know, some of them, they're like, Maria, we got it, you've taught us enough, and I can go in and do this thing. And some of them, they're like, no, we need you in there, you know. So the school will handle it a little bit differently when they know there's somebody in there that knows what they're doing.
Exactly. And I think that is so important. Pastor Brunton says he's caught many errors on his son's IEP. You got to take the time and not feel pressured to read it and sign off right away.
Not at all. Theirs was one I had where they had the wrong child's name on it. So you knew they were cutting and pasting. I was like, who is this? And they were like, oh, yeah, because you know, a lot of times you go in there and they already have it drafted. That is a draft. That is not the IEP that you have to agree upon. That is a draft. Okay, parents, and you can request that ahead of time. I request my daughter's IEP once they say the meeting is set, and then I say, okay, well, I need the IEP, I need the evaluations that were done, whatever supporting documentation you're using to make your decisions, I need a copy of. And as a parent and guardian, you have that right.
Absolutely. And most times it's a document that's over 20 pages. And so having that and reading the summaries and understanding exactly what's written, or taking it to somebody, an advocate who can help you understand, that is so key.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I am so excited because we've spent the last hour talking about autism in Black. And you know, if your child, even if it's not a diagnosis of autism, some of the tips that were shared here tonight on this forum is so beneficial. It's so beneficial. So if you are joining us, or you're just joining us on the replay, please feel free to share and like and share this, because this is really good information that's quite empowering to parents and help you feel not so isolated. Know that other people are going through the same challenges and are willing to help you walk through it. You are not alone.
Not at all.
So tell us where we can find you, how we can get your book, and what's going on with Maria Davis-Pierre.
Yeah, so I have a self-care book because we know that self-care is so, so important. And if we don't take care of ourselves as parents, caregivers, and advocates, we can't take care of our children. So it's almost a 200-page book, and you can use it in daily format or weekly format, and it's designed to get you through the year if you use it in weekly format. So you can go to www.autisminblack.org/self-care book, and it'll tell you more about the book, and you can purchase it there. You can find me. I'm very active on Instagram, so you can find me at Autism in Black on Instagram. My website is www.autisminblack.org. And I'm going to be speaking at the Black Play Therapy Symposium in April. Yes. And then in September, I'm going to be at the Diversity in Parenting Conference with you, speaking about autism in Black as well. And then there's a few more engagements sprinkled in between. But if you follow my social media, you'll see where I am and what I'm doing and new products that I'm going to be dropping for parents, especially when it comes to the IEP. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple of weeks, because I have a whole program for you parents to help you navigate the IEP and the school system.
That is so amazing. I have some really, really amazing colleagues and friends, and I'm just really blessed to be able to bring them to this forum to share with you. Maria, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing and for being so transparent with us tonight. And when we're done, if you just drop your contact information in the comment section, I would so appreciate it, and our people can find you.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to everyone who's taken the time out to join us, or if you're catching us on the replay, thank you for listening. And please, please, please share this and invite somebody else on this journey with us. This has been another episode of Teen Talk Live, where we transform the minds and lives of teens and those who love them. Have a good night, everyone.